What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. So today we're going to be doing another modification to my 2016 Harley Davidson Road King. And what we're going to be doing today is swapping out the stock handlebar setup with a different handlebar setup. Now, on most of the custom Harley Davidsons that I've had, I've always had Ape Hangers on my bikes. Anywhere from 14 inches up to about 18 inches. But on this bike here, I'm going to try something a little different. And this time, I'm going to try just a set of 10-inch risers with a drag bar. Now, the drag bar, I believe, has about a 3.5-inch rise. So my whole goal is to lower my hand placement a little bit more and give me a little bit better control over the bike. So without further ado, let's jump in and let's get this started. Okay, so this right here is my 2016 Harley Davidson Road King. Now, just to make this install easier, I'm probably going to have to remove the windshield for now because we need to get this part right here completely removed because our clamp that holds the handlebars in place is underneath here. But to take this off, we need to remove this front headlight assembly because under this main housing here, there's typically 2 bolts that holds this little piece right here in. Once you get those 2 nuts taken off, this top piece is connected to this piece so that we can remove all of that. Now, if we come over here, this is the new handlebars that I have, and then here is the riser kit that I bought. And if you're interested in any of these parts, I'll put a link in the description of this video. But this is basically what the risers are going to look like, okay? Just like that. Now, the whole goal of me doing this is because I don't mind these handlebars if I tilt them forward. The height doesn't bother me. The problem is, because of the way these handlebars are shaped, they're kind of factory shaped to kind of like swoop down over here. So when you roll them forward a little bit, it takes your wrist and puts it on like a weird angle like that. And I don't really like that feeling. It's not super comfortable. I can drive with it, it's just not the most comfortable. So by trying out some straight 10-inch risers and having a drag bar across the top, it should take my hands from an angle like this and straighten them out like that. So that's kind of the goal. Plus, on this bike build, I'm trying to add a little bit more black components and a little less chrome. So that's why I went with the black risers and the black handlebars. Let me start taking off the front windshield, digging into the front headlight, and let's start removing this top plate so that we can get these handlebars loosened up and taken off. Okay, so I went ahead and took the windshield off. Very simple. You're going to take the 2 outside nuts off right here on both sides. And then the windshield pretty much just pops forward and lifts out of place. It's a detachable windshield, very easy to put on and take off. Now, to get the headlight out, underneath the bottom here, there's a little screw right there that looks like this, okay? Very little. You're going to have to take that out, just a little Phillips head. Okay, so all you're going to do is basically twist this ring, twist it counterclockwise as you're pulling it out, and it just pops right off. So once you take that off, now we could go ahead and remove a couple of these outer bolts on the flange. Not these bolts here. We're not touching those. That's how you adjust your headlight angle. We're not touching those. We're just going to take these outer bolts right here that are on this flange. We're going to pull those out with a screwdriver or maybe a screw gun, whatever you find easier. Once you take those outer screws off the flange, then the headlight will pop out and that'll give us access to the 2 bolts that are under here. You can actually leave everything connected if you want. I mean, you could disconnect your harness and move the light out of the way, but before you start doing any of that, make sure you cover your front fender with some type of blanket, cloth, towel, whatever you have to protect the paint. Now, right there is the first nut, and then way back there, if you can see it, that's the second nut. They're a little tight to get to, but once you get those off, that's what releases this and allows us to get that out. Okay, so once you go ahead and remove that first nut right here, and I'm just using a small little socket here. I believe this is just a little 5/16 socket there. Get that first nut off. Then you can see here, that lifts up. So now, don't worry about the one in the back just yet. Just take care of the front nut first. Then this little bracket will pop off completely. That will then expose that screw right there. Now, this is where you're going to get tricky. You need to put something in there, maybe your fingers if you want. If you can get your fingers up under here and just hold that nut in place while you unscrew this bolt, that's fine. Just make sure you don't lose that little nut in there because it could fall down in there and get lost. Okay, so once you take that front little bracket off, then when you come up here, you're just going to take a little small screwdriver and pop that little top plate off and then a little small screwdriver up under that ring plate that looks like this right here. So here's that top plate, and then this little ring, same thing, little plastic pressure clips here. So just get a little tiny screwdriver up under there and it pops out. Once you pop that off, then you have access to these two little bolts right here that are right here and right here. So once you do that, this whole thing is gonna lift right off, just like that. Okay, now we have full access to our clamp. Okay, so I went ahead and removed my top clamp from my handlebars, but I did go ahead and remove my headlight shroud off. It's real simple. Again, once you take those side bolts off over here, they're right here, this shroud right here just slides right on, okay? But underneath here on a Road King, you have these switches right here. All you have to do is unplug the harnesses and these literally pop right off. So once you take those off, it just makes doing this a little easier because it gets them out of the way. So once you go ahead and disconnect those two switches on the headlight housing here, then you go ahead, remove your top 4 bolts from your clamp. And then as you see here from factory, they have all these little twist ties holding all your wire harnesses in place. Go ahead and just cut those zip ties or remove them, and then that will allow you to move your bars out of the way. And the reason I say that, and the reason why I have not disconnected anything yet, is because I want to put the risers on first, put my handlebar on, and then sit on the bike and see if I even like them. If I like them, then I'll go ahead and start disconnecting everything and swapping everything over, because I hope there's enough slack in these wire harness cables to do this handlebar swap without extending anything. Okay, so before I start messing around with installing the bottom riser clamps, I need to take these clamps off. And anytime I ever do a handlebar swap of any kind, I go ahead and I replace the bushings with polyurethane bushings. These are much harder. So anytime you're dealing with Ape Hanger bars or risers or anything like that, you want to make sure you replace those bushings with a harder polyurethane bushing kit so that your handlebars don't have as much wiggle to them. These are the better way to go. They're real simple to take off. It unbolts from the bottom and just unthreads out. Take those clamps off, and then you just get a screwdriver in there and pop out your bushings, put the new ones in, and put everything back together. Okay, I'm just starting on the one side of the bushing right now. So I'm gonna turn my wheel all the way to the left. Now, this harness right here might be in the way from you getting a socket right here. So if I grab my socket, put it there, it kind of hits on an angle because of this harness. All you have to do is unscrew this little plastic plug from right here, and then the harness drops off and you can move it out of the way to get your socket there. Once you do that, just go ahead and put your harness back up in there, put your plug back in, and you'll be ready to go. Okay, so once you go ahead and remove your top clamp off the top, just go ahead and take off the top metal plate here and make sure you remove the bottom plate from this bolt as well and set those to the side. Then you're left with just a metal cylinder in the middle, but it's these rubber bushings that we're replacing. So all you really have to do is take a screwdriver and then maybe a rubber mallet and just kind of gently pound that cylinder down through the bottom and pop it out. And then these cheap little rubber bushings pop right out. So again, what I'll do is I'll come over here, grab a rubber mallet, maybe I'll get a bigger screwdriver like this, okay? And then I'll just gently put my screwdriver on the outer edge, okay, of this cylinder, and then just tap it out with your rubber mallet. Okay, done. So it's really simple and easy to pop that out. So as you can see here, this is the cylinder here. It pops right out of this bushing. Sometimes the rubber bushing sticks to it, but there you go. So that's the metal sleeve in the middle, and then these are the rubber bushings. These are garbage. Let me just show you what I mean. Okay, so let's go ahead and open up this box here of the new polyurethane bushings. So they're gonna come with 2 metal sleeves that are gonna be much thicker. Let me just open that up and show you. So if we take a look at the new sleeves, I don't know if you can really see the thickness compared to the one on top is the factory, the one on the bottom is the new one. So you can see right there, the thickness of just the sleeve is much greater on the new set of polyurethane bushings. Now, as you see here in the box, that's why I like these kits like this from Arlen Ness. Really great kit, I've used those multiple times. Then you have new top plates. Then here are your new bushings. So if we take a look at these, here is the new one. As you can see here, like I'm using as much strength as I can to pinch it like that. And I'm already like really hurting my hand, just trying to pinch that shut. And you can see how hard that is. I mean, this is not, this top part here, you're not bending that at all. I mean, that is not moving. That's the new one. That's a polyurethane bushing. Now look at this one, the factory. I mean, this thing, you could literally bend this thing in half. Look at this. I mean, this thing is just junk. I don't like using these. So anytime I have an opportunity to swap out my bars, I always swap out to polyurethane bushings because they're much stiffer and they're much better, especially when you're replacing your bars with some type of higher riser or maybe a higher T-bar or maybe just Ape Hangers. You definitely want to get rid of these rubber bushings and get yourself a set of the polyurethane bushings. Now real quick, when you're going to put the new bushings back in place, the best thing to do is put a little bit of grease on the inside of the bushing in here, okay? That way your metal sleeve slides right in. So let me go ahead and do that and I'll be right back. Okay, so we went ahead and we got our new bushings put in, so that's all done. So the next thing I want to do is grab my factory bolts that we took out of the bushings. So what I'm going to do is put a new bottom plate on the bottom, and then we're going to slide a bolt up through the new bushing, and then we're going to put a top plate on, and then I'm going to use a little blue Loctite on the threads, and then we're just going to bolt it down to the bottom of these new 10-inch risers here. So let me go ahead and start doing that real quick, and we'll be right back. Okay, so real quick, I got one of the risers on the other side already. Now, before you start putting new risers on, what you might end up seeing when you first put the bushings in is that when you put your bolt in for the very first time, okay, the bolt might only stick out about this much, okay? That's because the bushing has not fully been compressed. So what I recommend, take your bolt with your old top and bottom plate and then this bracket right here. Put the bolt back in, put the bracket back on top, and tighten it down a little bit with a socket wrench. And once it kind of compresses down a little bit, then take it back off. And then when you stick your new bolt through, you'll have plenty of threads to thread on your new bars. Now on these particular risers here, to hold them from spinning, I just took some black electrical tape and wrapped it around this rectangular portion here. That way I could take a crescent wrench and stick it on like that to hold it from spinning. Well, I took a socket from underneath, tightened it up. Now I just got to do the same thing to the other side. So let me go ahead and do that and we'll be right back. Okay, so we got the new risers put on and so far they look pretty good. I just have to take the tape off, but I got everything tightened down. And again, I got everything straight. I did put the bars in for now with a top clamp just to make sure everything was lined up. And so far everything's pretty good. Again, these bars here are putting my hands in a similar position as the factory bars did, but instead of my wrists being cocked like that, they're a little bit straighter like that and a little bit higher. Not by much, maybe an inch or so, but so far they're looking pretty good. It's kind of what they look like there from a side profile. Again, I like how they kind of start off tapered and go up a little wider. I like the little cutout milling right here. Looks pretty good on both sides. Again, so far so good. So now when I sit on the bike, you can see here my wrist is a little bit more straight. So like because of the angles of the factory bars, my wrist was like kind of down here, a little lower, but on a little bit of like an angle like that. But now my hand's a little more straight and a little bit higher. So it's at a pretty good level. But I'd say realistically though, I'd say probably my hands are about at the same height as where they were before. It's just the angle is a little bit better and the blacked out risers and blacked out bar just looks a little bit better to me. And these bars here are cut out underneath for wires and there is a hole underneath here. So if I want to run my wiring from my controls down through here, there is space to do that. So that's pretty cool there. Okay, so I went ahead and I started taking off the controls on the right side of the handlebars. Because these bars here are only about 1 inch in diameter, I'm not going to run all of the wires through the actual handlebars because they weren't ran through the handlebars by factory either. So I'm just going to go ahead and put my throttle by wire, which is right here, that I took off of the old handlebars. I just disconnected them down here. Okay, and then I pulled them through out of the factory handlebars, and I'm just going to feed them down through the handlebar here and pull it out down the bottom here and take it down and plug it back in. Now to pull it through, it's not that hard. You could use, string or wire or whatever you want to use. I'm just going to grab this large zip tie here that I had laying around, and I'll take the zip tie and put it in here. And then what I'll do is I'll tape the end of my throttle by wire to this, and then I'll just pull it through, and then we'll be good to go. So let me do that real quick, and I'll be right back. Okay, so far so good. I went ahead and I pulled my throttle by wire through the handlebar, as I just discussed a minute ago, so that's ready to go. And I got my hand grip and my controls, everything mounted on there. And again, so far, I still have a good bit of room to play with here. So I think I'll be able to do this handlebar swap without actually needing to extend the wires or cables or anything like that. So that's always a good thing there. So I'm just gonna go ahead and keep working on swapping off the controls on the left side of the old handlebars, get them mounted over here, and then we'll start cleaning this all back up. So let me do that and we'll be right back. Okay, so I'm on the left side of the bike. So I just went ahead and put my brake up here loosely and just kind of clipped it on there so it's out of the way. Then on the controls, there's this bracket right here. Now it's the same thing on the right side. It's similar on the left side. There's gonna be this little tab right here, okay, where my finger's tapping. And then this little tab here where my finger's touching, that clips under that tab. You see where they touch? And there's little ribs right on that little tab there. So what happens is it clicks, ready? Like that. So to unclip it, you just have to basically take a screwdriver, like a small little screwdriver, under this little tab here on the towards the front of your controls, and just lift up a tad bit, and then that tab slides right out the back and it opens up. And then you can pop it right off. And then to put it back on, same thing. And then we're just gonna clip it on. It just kind of clips on like this, okay, on a little bit of an angle. And then you just take that and close it back in, clip it on. And that's that. So now I just gotta work on taking that handle off, which is always gonna be tough because that's usually like glued on. So I might have to use a little bit of heat or some soap, do whatever I can to kind of slide that off, maybe shove a little tiny screwdriver from this side here just to loosen up the glue and pull that off because the left side is usually glued on. But so far, the right side's already done, so that's good. Throttle by wire works good. Everything's tightened down. Again, I'll get all my wires kind of zip tied out of the way here once I'm all done. But now that we got this side on here, I just have to get this grip off, slide it on so we could get this lined up. And then I'll go ahead and maybe put some type of a little bit of adhesive on here. Not a lot, just a drop or two. Sometimes I just use soapy water. And when you stick it on there and the soap kind of dries, it grips it. So we'll figure something out with that. So let me go ahead and try getting that one off and then we'll be right back. Okay, so I went ahead and got the grip off without destroying it. Again, this is what it looks like here. I don't know what kind of adhesive it is. I don't know if it's really a glue or just some type of kind of sticky residue. But all I did was I took a skinny screwdriver, a long skinny one like that, and just started jimmying it behind the actual hand grip. And just kind of work the screwdriver all the way around down to about here. I didn't go all the way to the edge, but probably about 3/4 of the way down like that. And was just very careful that I didn't poke a hole through or anything like that. Once I started loosening up this sealant around here, then I just kind of took the grip and just kept kind of twisting it until it broke the seal and it popped off. And then I went ahead and I just took a little bit of Dawn dish soap with my finger and just kind of rubbed it in through the inside of the grip and slid it on into place. Then I could go ahead and get my grips put on, locked down, and then once these grips are locked down with bolts, that'll hold this hand grip from sliding back and forth. And then once that tad little bit of dish soap dries, it'll kind of stick to the bar and then we'll be good to go. Let me go ahead and start working on tightening this all down, putting it all back together, and then we'll be right back. Okay, so far so good. So I went ahead and I got everything hooked back up. So all my controls are in place. Everything's lined up. Throttle works, cables work. Everything's good. All of the cables and wires are long enough to work with these 10-inch risers and drag bar, which I believe has around a 3.5-inch rise right here. Now, I put everything back together. Everything's tightened back down. I still got to get my headlight put in. But the problem that I'm having now, and I sort of knew this was coming, is this top bracket right here, which is sitting right here. This no longer fits. Now again, I didn't really care too much about this because I was planning on eventually changing this all out to black anyways. So what I'm going to do, because I really don't care about this part, but I don't want my fork lock to be exposed like that. So what I'm going to do is I just took a marker and I notched out this corner. So I'm going to take a grinding wheel and cut this corner out right here on both sides. That way, this part here, okay, where my thumb is, all that should fit in the front, and then the middle part will slide up right in between the risers and bolt down right here where it normally should. So that's kind of my goal. So again, you don't have to do this because again, I'm sure they make aftermarket covers for this, but the easiest thing I found that I'm gonna do, because I really don't care about this part right now, because again, I do plan on swapping all that out with black eventually, but for now, I'm just gonna notch those little corners out, and then this should fit back into place and bolt down and look a little bit better. Okay, we are done. We got everything put back together. So this is basically what it looks like. So everything went pretty good. Taking everything apart and lining up the new risers and putting on the bars and lining up the factory cables and factory wiring, all that pretty much fit like a glove. I didn't have to extend anything or anything like that. So again, these are 10-inch risers with a drag bar that I believe has about a 3.5-inch rise from the bottom of the bar up to the top here. So this setup here gives you about 13 inches, give or take, of height compared to the factory handlebars with the small risers at the bottom was around 12. So you're about an inch or so higher with this setup. And I gotta say, it looks really good. Got everything put back together, everything tightened down. The only custom thing I had to do was cut the fork lock bracket over here. So all I did was, again, I measured out where my risers were here, and I just took a marker and notched that out right there. And then I just took a grinding wheel and notched off the ends like that. And then I took my Dremel and just kind of smoothed off the edges and made everything line up. And then that way the center would go right up through the center here and would bolt back down underneath here to your main headlight assembly. So again, everything is now back to normal, bolted down nice and tight, and the only thing I had to really do was just notch off the corner of that bracket and just notch off this plastic cap that says Road King and just notch off the little corners like that. So everything went together real nice and everything's hooked up, so that's what it looks like. So there you go there. But there you go, everybody. So we went ahead and removed the factory stock handlebar on the 2016 Road King. I just didn't like the look of them. I didn't like the feel or the style. But we went ahead and swapped them out with something different, and this time we went with a 10-inch riser with a drag bar that I believe has about a 3.5-inch rise from the center clamp to the top bend. But as I just showed you, you're able to swap out the factory bars with a setup like this without extending your cables or extending your wires. There was just enough wire and cable to do this without doing any kind of modification. So doing it this way will also save you money, because if you go with a taller setup like a 16 or 18-inch Ape Hanger, not only do you have the cost of thicker, higher quality, more expensive bars, but then you have to go with a more expensive wire and cable extension kit and do a lot more work. This right here, simple and easy. So at the end of the day, I think it actually looks pretty good and I'm pretty happy with it. So I'm gonna ride like this for a little while, try it out. Again, this is the first time I've actually had a set of risers and drag bars, or some might consider it more of a T-bar. But this is the first time I've actually had a setup like this because I'm used to Ape Hangers, but so far my initial impressions, I really like it. So again, the whole goal of this video is to really show you that you could swap out the factory handlebar setup on a Road King to something a little sportier by using 10-inch risers and then a drag bar with about no more than about a 3.5-inch rise. And you could do that without actually extending your wires or cables. But that's going to be it for today's video. I hope this video helps some of you out. Do me a favor and hit that thumbs up button and like this video. If you have any questions, go ahead and put them in the comments section and I'll get back to you as soon as I can. And also do me a favor, subscribe to the channel because it definitely helps me out and I greatly appreciate it. So that's it. I just want to say thank you to each and every one of you. Thank you. I truly appreciate you all. And as always, see you in the next video.